at Stratford Circus. We're going to first of all do a test of the reverberation time in this hall. There's a lot of reflection coming in here. You can probably hear it in my voice. My voice is reflecting off all the glass and all the walls and the ceiling and this very hard floor we've got. And we're going to measure the reverb RT60, and that is a very commonly used measurement, statistical measurement for the reverberation measurement in a room. My colleague is going to burst the balloon. It's going to be picked up by the microphone as an impulse, and the computer is going to analyze it. And when we've done it, we're going to set up some acoustic panels that absorb some of this reverberation. And we're going to redo the whole test again later on, and we're going to be able to see the difference between the two. I'm in the middle of the room. Dan is towards one side. He's going to pop the balloon, and the impulse is going to reflect off and bounce off all the ceiling, the floor, and the walls, and the microphone will pick up the reflection and do the analysis. And I am now going to signal to Dan to burst the balloon. The wideband measurement is around 1.238 seconds. That's 1.25 seconds. Dan has now moved to another part of the acoustic space, the other side of the room, nearer the glass. And we're going to repeat the experiment with balloon number 2. On my signal, Dan. One and a quarter to 1 1/3, approximately, depending on where the measurement is taken in the room. We've done it outside. We'll measure the RT60 reverberation time inside this space and see what the difference is. And when I put my hand up, Dan will burst the balloon, and we'll get the calculation coming straight on the screen, and I'll show the camera. This is the table of the results of that last impulse. And the second line down, the first line is RT60. The second line, it says wideband. That is the overall wideband measurement. And we have a measurement of 0.89. Thank you for coming. Wonderful choir. Good to see you. Well, we did the recording earlier of just the hall without a choir. We did it with no panels, and we recorded the reverberation, no panels, just the room as it is on its own. Then we brought the panels in, and we did a comparison, and of course the reverberation was a little less. That was a scientific objective measurement. Naveen is here with his choir, and we're going to repeat the same test without the panels and with the panels, but with a choir singing, and then we're going to discuss their findings, and at the end we'll compare the objective scientific measurements with how Naveen feels about what difference, if any, the panels have made. So thank you for coming. That has completed the first part of the subjective test of the room, and now we're going to actually do the same thing again, Naveen and his choir, and we're going to put the panels in, and they're going to tell us after they have sung within the space of the panels whether it's made any difference. we'll wait and see. Thank you. We've got half of them in. We're making a backdrop. As you can see, it's so U-shaped. And we're going to do the same again at the front of the choir. It will be an inverted U, and the choir will walk in at the sides. But basically, apart from the sides, the gap in the sides, it will be a complete shell right around the choir. Now, the good news is that Naveen has already been up to that back wall and tested the sound by flicking his fingers, and he has already said that there is no sound being reflected back. Normally, from the back wall, he would hear the ping of the snap of his fingers actually being reflected. Well, what is happening is it's being absorbed. So that is good news, because the more sound that is absorbed, the more it's self-contained, and the sound will not be going out into the room, and you won't get the reflections coming back. So it's looking good.
This is the day that the Lord has made. We've come to praise the Lord. 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 Ulam flabawes honor. Basilica Jesulin, Zukutula.
The moment these panels were put in place, I could hear immediately the room disappear, and you heard more of your voice and less of the room. From a recording point of view, they are superb, absolutely wonderful panels. I can say both objectively and subjectively they're a success. When we were putting the panels up earlier, you were at the back wall there, clicking your fingers like this and listening for the ricochet.
It was very distinct. I stood with the wall next to my head, and if I was to click, you expect the sound to come back from both sides.
Yes.
But on that side, nothing was really coming back. So it then felt like I was hearing the click as it resonated off the far wall, and I could hear the echo and the original sound, like the...
So it was unidirectional. You weren't getting it from the back wall, but you were getting it where the panels weren't in place. That's brilliant. You obviously have seen that the panels do absorb the sound. You could hear it. How do you feel, just as an overview, now you've performed inside the space, do you feel any real difference for rehearsal?
When we sang in the room before, there was a lot of sound, and it's a very fluffy... I wouldn't use the word fluffy because this room wasn't fluffy, but it was just muddy. The singer's ears, the training musician's ears, hear all kinds of sound, and they get used to that kind of muddiness. So they allow that to become a norm, and they accept that. So if they're slightly off in their entries, if they're slightly muddy in their sound, if they're not quite perfectly matched for vowels next to the sound next to them, if the timbre, the colouring, the placement of their voice isn't the same, they're going to allow that to happen because they're used to that sound. That's what they think they expect to hear. This would really encourage sound to be, made very purposefully, and that would be really good for a choir. So in that choir direction moment, making a decision about where I go to rehearse, these would almost make me not care where I was, so long as I could transport these to wherever I was. And if you can get them in the different sizes as I'd heard, then then it becomes beneficial to our director to not have to worry about the venue that we rehearse in or perform in. We could then start to really get used to a certain sound and redevelop that sound consistently for our own ears.
You tend to either just hear your part and not everybody else. This enabled you to hear everyone else. But also, I could really hear myself.
It's also easier to sing quietly.
It reminded me of like being in a vocal booth with the headphones, that quality you get when you're recording.
I was able to enjoy the singing more because I could relax
That's wonderful.
and give it that nuance.
Well, thank you very much. All right, well, I appreciate you coming and helping with this little experiment. It's, thank you, Naveen, and thank you to MBA. Well, there we have it. We've done the 2 measurements with bursting the balloons in the room and with the panels. We're now taking the panels down. For the record, the difference was, if you remember earlier when we did it in the room, we were talking about 1 1/4 to 1 1/3 seconds. When we were inside the panels, we were under a second. It was about 9/10 of a second. So we've shaved off 1/4 to 1/3 of a second of reverberation time, which is pretty good, actually, to cut down those reflections. So it shows scientifically that just putting up those panels has absorbed the sound, has treated the sound, and it's beneficial. And as you saw also, the choir objectively thought there was an improvement in the sound as well, and it helped their intonation and their singing, and they could hear themselves a little bit better. There was more focus between each other in their singing. They could hear what they were doing and what the person was doing. And as I said, when I summed up with Naveen, the choir director, when I listened to the recorded sound through the headphones, I could definitely hear a difference. I was able to hear each voice in the choir as though they were in front of me, individual voices. Whereas outside the panel, in this room, it was really, I could just hear the choir sound overall. So thanks to Philip and thanks to MBA, I think the conclusion is the panels have made a significant difference in a real-life choir performance situation. We've measured it scientifically and we measured it with singers. And both times we could hear the difference, and it was an improvement. So thanks to everybody, thanks to the MBA, thanks to Willow Leaf Media for bringing the film equipment and setting up the whole recording and the event today.